Hi guys! In this video we're going to be talking about algebraic expressions. So this is a new set of notes, it's a new unit, and this is what this whole section is going to be about. It's about algebraic expressions. So because it's a new unit, we have a bunch of new vocabulary words. As you can see, there's 7 for this one. But fortunately, this section isn't too hard either. Okay, so the first word we're going to talk about is terms. Terms are the pieces of our expression, and an expression is like a math sentence. So we can see right here I have 2 pieces. I have my 5x and my 3. So a term can be a number, like my 3. It can be a variable, like my x, or it can be a number and a variable together, like this 5x is a number and a variable together. A coefficient, that's our next word right here, it's a number connected to a variable. So if we look at this example right here, our coefficient is going to be the 5 because it's connected to that x right there. And we know that that 5 is multiplying by that x. We've seen that on our bell works. Okay, a variable, our next word right here, is a letter in place of an unknown value. So our variable is our x, and it's called a variable because it can change. We can plug different numbers in for x, and this will give us a different answer each time. And we don't know what value 5 is multiplying by, so that's why we put an x there to say 5 times some number. A constant is a number all by itself. So back to this example, our constant would be the 3, or we're actually going to call this a negative 3 because we include that sign in front. So that would be our constant because we have a 5x and a negative 3, or 5x minus 3 right there. Our next word is an expression, and like I said, it's like a math sentence. An algebraic expression is without an equal sign. So right here, this is an expression because I have 5x minus 3 with no equal sign. An equation is when we do have an equal sign. See how it says equate or equals? That has an equal sign, so I could say 5x minus 3 equals, and then I could put some number over here. Okay, and a couple units ago, we just took our numeric expressions test, so you've kind of heard expressions before. A numeric expression is when it only has numbers. So we just saw that. We did our order of operations, our GEM-DOS, and that's how we solved those. Now we're doing what we call algebraic expressions, and these are kind of the same idea, but they have numbers and variables together. So we have our x's in there. We've seen some of these on our bell works, so it shouldn't be too new. Okay, that's all of our vocabulary. Now let's see how all of these pieces work together. Okay, so here are some facts to help us keep everything straight. So these facts are going to help us identify terms in an expression or an equation. So the first thing we're going to do when we're finding the terms is we're going to circle them. So it says to find the terms by circling the number and our variable. So right here, that would be our 3a. It's a number and a variable together. We're going to circle those. And we're also going to circle the sign in front of it if it has one. So this 18 is another term, and we're going to keep that plus in front of it and say that this is a positive 18. So I have 2 terms here. I have 3a and positive 18. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at any variables that are alone. Those variables have a coefficient of 1. This example doesn't have one. We see this had a coefficient of 3. But let's say I had x plus 2, for example. I have 1x right here, but I don't need to write that 1. I could write this as 1x. That would be perfectly fine. But just an x is kind of the same as saying 1 times x, because anything times times 1 is just itself. So these 2 statements, so 1x plus 2 is the same as saying x plus 2. Those are going to be the same thing. Okay. If a number is next to a variable, the number and the unknown variable are being multiplied. So that's like this 3a right here. 3a is the same thing as saying 3 times a. Or if I write that out, 3 times a. And again, we've seen that on our bell work whenever we have like a 5 and an x, we know that that's 5 times whatever x is. Okay, Hopefully all of these ideas are making sense. If not, please ask in class. We can go over these things. I know it's a lot of new words and vocabulary. Let's look at a couple examples together here. So right down here we have an algebraic expression. We know it's algebraic because there's a variable in there, that x. And we know it's an expression because there's no equal sign. So what we want to do is we're going to list out all of these things. We're not solving anything today. All we're doing is making lists. So on this one, they want us to list out the terms. Remember, the terms are the pieces of this expression. So if I look at it, I have this piece here and this piece here. And remember, I include that sign there. So I have two pieces, and my pieces are, I have a 5x as my first piece, and I have a positive 13, and I'm just going to write that as a regular 13 right there as my second piece. Those are my terms. Okay, the next thing they want me to do is list my coefficients. Coefficients are the numbers in front of my variables. So if I look, I have one variable, I have my x, and the number in front of that was a 5. So that's all I need to write right there for my coefficients. My constants are just the numbers. So my 5's not going to be a constant because it's attached to the x. I want a number that's all by itself. So I'm going to look right here. My 13 is a constant, so I'm going to write 13. And it's constant because it doesn't change. It's always going to be a 13 in here. This one, the variable changes. Okay, so I have my terms, I have my coefficient, I have a constant. Now I'm ready to look at my variables, and we've kind of already talked about it right here. My variable in this one is the x. So I'm just going to write the x, and I don't need to write the coefficient with it right here because they only asked for the variable. The 5 that went with it's up there. So I see I have my pieces, and then I have each piece listed out down here again. Okay, let's look at another example. This one has 4 pieces in this expression. We have our 2z plus 2 plus y plus 3. So this one I'm going to have a little bit more to write out. So let's look at our terms. I have 4. I have this piece here. I have this piece, and this piece. So my terms, I have a 2z because those are stuck together. I have a positive 2, and I'm just going to write it as a 2 right there. I have a y, which we know is the same as a 1y, so I'm going to put a 1 in front of it for right now. Make that look a little bit more like a 1. And then I have my positive 3. So I have a 2z, a 2, a y or a 1y, and a 3. My coefficients are now the numbers in front of my variables. So looking at my letters, in front of my z I have a 2. And in front of my y, because there was nothing there, I know it's going to be a 1. So my coefficients are a 2 and a 1. Constants. Remember, constants are just my numbers all by themselves. And I've got a couple of those. I have a 2 and a 3, so I'm going to list those. And finally, I'm going to list my variables. All by themselves, I had a z and I had a y, so I'm going to list those. Okay, that's all we need to do for that is list out the pieces. So over here on the pause and try, you're going to do that. So you're going to circle your terms, list the coefficients, list the constants, and the variables. I'll see you in class. Bye!